So as we're all very well aware, last year was a devastating one for the Democrats, after a complete upset victory by Donald Trump, taking many states that were firmly held in Obama's pockets during the 8 years before. Despite the fact that there's been this back and forth between the Democrat and Republican parties for basically forever, in that a Democrat wins for 2 terms and then a Republican wins for 2 terms, that's typical, and has been the norm for most of the US elections, likely due in part to abysmal polling and reporting from the mainstream media. The election of Trump surely and definitely surprised many, as we have seen time and time again. And yes, somehow is still surprising them with the ongoing insistence on Russian hacking and any real potential that Trump is going to be impeached, which, by the way, believe what you like, let's just say,
I am become skeptical.
Let's just say Trump being impeached is an incredible long shot. Potential, but I would doubt it. And certainly, even if he was impeached, Democrats seemingly think that this means that it's going to be resolved by putting the Hill Dog into the Oval Office in his place. My friends, that's not the case. Or at least that's what I've seen some Democrats or leftists seem convinced of, but the fact of the matter is that Trump's likely not going to be impeached. He's going to be your president until 2020 at the least. Because it is so highly unlikely that Trump will be removed from office until 2020, thus it is seemingly overwhelmingly important for the Democrat Party to take a good, hard look at itself in the mirror, am I right? To take note of the problems that caused them to lose in such a way that they could not apparently even have conceived of, and have lost, more notably, so many previous Obama voters. And if they continue on without the support of these previously aligned blue states that then went to Trump in 2016, what are they supposed to do? I mean, no excess of votes from California and New York are going to help them at this point. It's not going to help them win the Electoral College. I mean, regardless of whether or not the extra votes that they did happen to get supposedly for Hillary even really did originate from legal American citizens and not from dead, blind dogs or something, that would still mean, though, even if you put another 10 million votes in California and New York, it doesn't matter. The Democrats still obviously must look at the swing states that went to Trump, the states that he won, and must seek to appease them, and the desires of those voters, those major states that they lost in the Electoral College, such as Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, if they are to have any chance of winning in 2020. I'm sure that kind of seems obvious, but I thought I should bring it up. Since I did a 1-year review of Trump since the night of the election, I thought I would similarly do a kind of 1-year review of the Democrat Party, the DNC, to see if they've made any improvements to appeal at large to the massive number of voters that they lost to Trump during the 2016 election, particularly in the Midwest. Certainly, Hillary did nothing to win over these, quote, flyover states, with her evident contempt and disdain for not only the people there, but their industries, and the industries across the Rust Belt. As such, I would think it most advantageous for the Democrat Party to look at the kinds of issues that change citizens' votes since the 2012 and 2008 elections, considering just how many of these same citizens voted for Obama, not even once, but often twice. Of course, in the months since Trump's election, we have some new data, or more pertinent data maybe to look at, that would describe just what happened during 2016. Why did people change their votes, and what issues were concerning them? And as such, if at least I was a strategist for the DNC, I would certainly be very concerned about some of these data if I was trying to win in 2020 or the midterms in 2018. Now, of course, I'm not necessarily trying to help out the DNC, but I am trying to understand things as always. And as such, I think it's important to understand why the DNC lost. I think many of us know, but we need to go into the data. Moreover, I think we need to understand why at current, the DNC doesn't really seem to stand a chance. That, of course, does not mean that those of us more right-leaning or right-aligned should give up. Let us be very clear here in the outset. Left-leaning liberals still control the media, and more importantly, perhaps, they control the academy. I have made several videos about this, which just go to my catalog of videos, they are aplenty. As such, we can't just give up. But I am interested, because I'm a little concerned. What the fresh fuck is the DNC going to do in preparation for 2020? Because right now, they seem to be a little bit lost. But hang on. Let's just look at the data. Let's try to take a look at more of the numbers. Research data from Democracy Fund may provide us, and the DNC in turn, with some areas and topics to focus on following the loss to Trump of Hillary Clinton. These graphs here show in the black the likelihood of a GOP vote in 2012 and the likelihood of a GOP vote in 2016 in the red. Here we can see a massive decrease in favorable attitudes towards immigrants affecting the GOP vote, as well as a smaller decrease in favorable attitudes towards Black people and similarly towards Muslims. That is, holding unfavorable opinions towards immigrants and to a lesser extent Muslims and Black people was associated more with the GOP vote in 2016 than it was in 2012. Knowing how many people voted for Trump in 2016 voted for Obama in 2012 or 2008, we can surmise that this increase may not just be attributable to more invisible racists somehow coming out of the woodwork, and that there are more complex mechanisms at work here. And there are further reasons to support that. For one, in this study, the questions about the opinions towards immigrants, right? They asked about paths towards citizenship for illegal migrants, potential detriments illegal migrants may pose to the United States, and how difficult it should be for one to immigrate. So when we talk about a decrease in positive opinions towards immigrants, you have to understand that means that people were saying they thought it should be more difficult for illegals to gain a path towards citizenship, and that perhaps they thought that illegal migrants had a greater detriment on society. Not that they just hate beaners or some shit like that. This is why you always need to look at research like this carefully. Don't be so easily fooled. Similarly, the opinions towards Black people subscale ask questions about systematic or historical discrimination. Did people believe that it exists? They asked about whether or not Black people were as capable as whites to accomplish their life goals, or if there was something about Black people that required assistance from outside sources. And it asked whether or not Black people were generally mistreated in the United States. Again, on this instrument, if you said that Black people kind of just needed to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, to quote my favorite champion of social justice, Anna Kasparian.
And so, enough with this victimhood, because I feel like there's a lot of victimhood coming from you right now, right? If you want to compete for these jobs, go out there and learn. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Learn a new language. There's nothing wrong with knowledge.
It meant that you were reported as having lower opinions towards Black people. Again, be aware of this type of reporting. I'm pointing this out because that means that these scales don't merely illustrate an increase in hating migrants or hating Black people, but rather in an increase in questioning ideas of something like white privilege, perhaps? Of questioning some more traditional liberal narratives that we've heard over the last 8 years, in particular under the Obama administration. Further, here we can see that those who considered themselves liberal were more likely to vote GOP on both social issues and economic issues, meaning it didn't change whether or not the person felt that they were more liberal, their opinions just changed on certain political topics. That is, while conservatives' voting habits were mostly unmoved during these 4 years, liberals were more drawn to vote GOP in 2016, or more accurately to vote Trump, given a greater concern with economic and social issues, which in this scale included questions about same-sex marriage and abortion. Moreover, we see directly a considerable uptick in individuals who consider themselves strong Democrats to have voted for the GOP in 2016. As such, as we go forward and based on these findings, we could perhaps explain much of the increase in GOP or Trump support as being related to the decrease in positive opinions towards Muslims, the more complex opinions regarding Black discrimination in the United States, and less favorable opinions towards undocumented migrants and their potential effect on society, as well as just a less positive outlook towards social issues, which have become the dominant issues of the Democrat Party, and also concerns with the current state of the economy, or such as it was before Trump's election, considering that, yes, it is true, the economy does appear to be on an upward swing. Taking all of this into account, I would think that going forward, just about the last thing that the DNC would want to do to gain back these lost former DNC, often liberal Obama voters is focus on, for example, identity politics, amnesty for illegal migrants, and general positive affectation towards Muslims, right? We have also seen a massive downswing in non-college educated whites in DNC voting over the last decade. That is that these blue-collar workers, these white blue-collar workers with generally more blue-collar concerns, have become less and less involved and less likely to vote for the Democrat Party. Well, what have we seen in response to these data over the last year from the DNC? given that I'm not a political strategist, I can simply look up data such as these and make a couple of extrapolations. Don't focus on identity politics. Don't focus on white privilege. Don't focus on being sycophantic towards Muslims and undocumented migrants. So, what has been the outcome? What has been the response? Well, if you were to look at every mainstream media outlet following the most recent November elections in Virginia and New Jersey, for example, you would think that the DNC must be doing gangbusters. Just look at all of these articles that weirdly all use the exact same word to describe the election as a tsunami. It's not like there's any kind of memo going around about that use of terminology or anything. Excuse me. And you know what? Hang on. Let's be real. It is true that seats were won for the DNC, but they weren't really upsets, or at least major upsets given the states that they occurred in. But again, hey, let's not think too hard about that, should we? The Democrat tsunami is happening. Finally, we're going to stump the Trump. They must be doing something right beyond just creating insane and incredibly fucked up attack ads that portray this Nazi truck with a sticker in support of the Republican candidate in Virginia. In this completely accurate portrayal, it depicts how the average Giuseppe voter is going to come and kill all the brown children. Because, that was obviously his campaign platform. Kill all the brown children. And by the way, you can tell it's a Nazi truck because of the way that it has also, see this right here, a Gadsden flag sticker? Yeah, as we've already learned recently, the Gadsden flag is particularly indicative of Nazism, right? Yes, they must be doing something far greater than just creating horrible attack ads portraying their opponents as KKK Nazis, right? Really? Have they really been doing so much better? I mean, as the entire world has become overwhelmingly aware over the last few months, absolutely everyone, or excuse me, every man in any position of power is apparently a serial rapist. And while it's one thing for DNC leaders to drag their feet in the condemnation of scumbags like Harvey Weinstein, oh, give me a couple days and hang on, I know I've seen that exact same argument against Trump when he didn't criticize someone quickly enough, so I get it. I know that Harvey Weinstein is a close personal friend to many of them, so I get it. Maybe it will take you a few days. It is another thing when similar allegations are lobbied against, for example, a Democrat senator like Al Franken. Far be it for me to imply Republicans are infallible. After all, it's been stonewalling from the fucking neocon shitheads that's prevented much of the proposed legislation from sailing smoothly over the last year. But it comes off as a bit more than slightly hypocritical when the locus of so many of these accusations are coming out against self-proclaimed feminists and politicians who base much of their political and social outlooks on women's rights. That obviously does not make one act less reprehensible than the other, but the irony is certainly not lost on me, and nor is it clearly lost on many others. Neither is the irony lost on me when a Democrat Florida congresswoman who has made a career on things like fighting for historical black colleges and helping the black community.
A public servant, and your job is to help people and to get things done.
Is sentenced to 5 years in prison for creating a fake charity, supposedly for the purpose of raising money for poor children's education in Florida, and then using it as a personal leisure slush fund. Again, generally speaking, I'm not a fan of the GOP. I'm not a Republican. Until 2016, I had never voted for a Republican in a major election. And while I've also never voted Democrat, I certainly was not the only one to have a change of heart, as I have already illustrated in terms of the 2016 presidential United States election. So, despite all the rape allegations being tossed at Democrats and their buddies in Hollywood, we still apparently saw this tsunami of support for the Democrats in November, right? That must mean that things are improving. I mean, outside of that, the DNC and Democrats have certainly made some changes in response to Trump's victory that is gaining them support and popularity in spite of all the negative press, yeah? Except that's not really the case. Even CNN of all outlets, agrees that popular opinion towards the Democrat Party is at its lowest point in 25 years, with 54% of Americans expressing a negative opinion towards the DNC. Even after the election, in the months since March, since they've been gathering these data, the general positive opinion towards the DNC has dropped from 44% to 37%. That's not to say that Republicans are perceived of overwhelmingly highly, but generally, opinion towards Republicans has remained more or less consistent, while the Dems has dropped fairly significantly, even in research polls conducted by fucking CNN, since, they're a very trustworthy source, the most trusted name in news, mind you, and it's not like they have any kind of historical tendency to skew their sampling in any way. No, of course not CNN. The most trusted name in news. Always correct on that polling. But if even CNN is saying that the average American doesn't trust the DNC, well, that should be highly indicative that they really do not trust or like the DNC. Why might that be outside of these newly levied sexual assault allegations then? I mean, these have only happened over the last couple months, but we've been seeing this decrease for months. Well, it could be because, despite the fact that the case was dismissed, it's at this point beyond question that the DNC outright rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders, the candidate with the most popular support, particularly among young people outside of Trump, I guess, or probably more than Trump, honestly, particularly among millennials, and likely the only person who could have stood a real fighting chance against him, although Odin knows how deeply the Don would have bullied the old commie in the general. But moreover, there's the fact that seemingly every criticism made towards Trump's campaign for the last year was perpetuated by Hillary's campaign in and of itself, which, for example, paid for Steele to collaborate with Kremlin operatives to gain information on the Trump campaign. I mean, as far as I can tell, that's not an actual illegal thing to do, but it reflects quite poorly upon the accuser when it becomes public that the entire kerfuffle behind the Steele dossier, that's right, the Piss dossier, was essentially, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, do what I say and not what I do, right? I mean, these are Alinskyite tactics, are they not? Point at your adversary while you do what they are doing. Of course now, all while Donna Brazile is seemingly turning traitor on Hillary Clinton, likely in a desperate attempt to save her own skin and any future within the DNC. Finally, now we have this whole shit show with Mueller still in full swing and with no clear direction of where any of it is headed, which may very well end up with many influential members of the DNC being fingered for any number or manner of bullshit. But in short, it's not hard to see why the ratings for the DNC are in the shitter. But there are problems beyond those I've just mentioned. The core problem seems to be that Democrats and the DNC have simply learned nothing. They have not learned their lesson. I have certainly spoken at length about the mass hysteria of the left and how much the difficulty with letting go appears to be the result of a face threat to one's social identity, resulting in an ongoing sensation of hyper-arousal and anxiety concerning that identity. We all have an individual identity, but our individual identity lies at the circle and center of all of our social identities. And when one of our social identities is significantly threatened, well, it makes us question, who am I? And it seems that as long as Trump is president, all of these social identities are going to be constantly more salient. That means that they're going to be activated. And as long as they're threatened, it's going to cause this hyper-arousal. It's going to cause fear and anxiety. These people are not happy. And I think that explains a lot when it comes to the average person screeching helplessly at the sky in opposition to Trump. But it should not explain career politicians and political strategists who get paid the big old dollary dues to think about this, to think about it critically, and their analysis. It should not be affecting them. The biggest issue I see facing the DNC is their seeming inability to move away from the very issues that originally alienated voters last year and in the previous couple of years, namely maintaining a focus on social justice and identity politics issues, support of undocumented migrants in the face of all rationality, and this furthering of anti-white or white privilege narratives that likely led not just to a change in opinion towards black people that we saw in 2016, but probably in part to the rise of counter-white identitarian movements that are gaining speed and popularity in the United States today. And you can hate the alt-right all you want, but they have a point, do they not here? They are a reactionary movement. For if it were not for these instances, I do not think the alt-right would have gained the momentum that it has. I'm just saying, if you're looking for an explanation, that seems to be a fairly good one. And let's get into some of those explanations. Just a couple of examples, shall we? First, there's the case of Kate Steinle. shot by an undocumented migrant, Garcia Zarate, in 2015, who himself was just recently found not guilty of her murder by a jury in San Francisco. Zarate was released from prison after being held on a marijuana charge without ICE agents being informed of his illegal status, because it is a sanctuary city. Not only then could the murder of this poor girl have been avoided if the left's pet project of these sanctuary cities that do not enforce immigration law, if they had not existed, but we would not now be seeing further injustice of this man, still an undocumented person, unlikely to serve more than 3 years in penance for the murder of a young girl. Similarly, in California, we have seen the implementation of enforced gender pronouns that is now in use across certain fields, particularly the medical fields, in that if you continue to refer to patients without their preferred pronoun, that could land you with a $1,000 fine or up to a year in prison. Again, this is legislation I'm talking about. These are political matters. Not just screeching harpies shouting in the streets, not just college kids irate, not just Antifa beating people over the head with bike locks. This is actual legislation, and this is why I'm talking about it. I'll talk about all that other shit other times, but this is the legal and political state of the DNC. But Aiden, you say, that's California. We can't take California seriously. After all, apparently about 30% of them want to secede. And by the way, let them. Be my guest. Place bombs all along the San Andreas Fault, and bon voyage, get the fuck off. So instead, let's get a little bit more myopic. We'll find just one topic that seems related to this shift in voting that I have seen fairly consistent over the last year in the DNC in multivariate forms. Something that hasn't changed. Something that probably alienated a lot of voters in 2016 and something they seem unwilling to drop. It is the forwarding of the theory of white privilege. The most public and evident example surely has to be Michelle Obama's statement of disdain regarding the GOP and Congress at large over the fact that it was comprised of, quote, all white men. That is, of course, a falsehood, but illustrates just one of the more public examples of anti-white or anti-male sentiment held by prominent DNC figures. Similarly, earlier this year, then DNC chair candidate Sally Boynton Brown said it was her job as a member of the DNC and as potential chair to shut other white people down when they speak up.
And my job is to shut other white people down when they want to interrupt. My job is to shut other white people down when they want to say, oh no, I'm not prejudiced. I'm a Democrat. I'm accepting. My job is to make sure that they get that they have privilege, and until we shut our mouths.
Although she was thankfully not named chair of the DNC, this sentiment again seems common among her colleagues. DNC Data Services Manager Madeline Leader recently sent out an email in regards to hiring new DNC employees at various levels in technical positions, with a very clear caveat at the end of her email that no straight white males were to be recommended for the position, as she clearly had no interest in hiring them because they were already too well represented. This is fairly clear in violation of United States Human Resources discrimination laws, but whoopsie, I forgot for a moment, you can't discriminate against white people. Although we've certainly seen this publicly in response to the outrage of the It's Okay to Be White campaign, with the general resounding answer, no, it isn't okay to be white, from leftists. But again, those are screeching randos on Twitter. These are not official or near official statements from leaders within the Democrat Party. All, of course, as I should mention, we do find that anti-white hate crimes are actually on the rise over the last few years. But yet again, I seemingly forget myself. Of course, I must remember you cannot be racist against white people, even as you brazenly proclaim it's simply not okay to possess a certain color of skin en masse. My point is, we're not just seeing this across randoms. We're not just seeing this across screeching harpies. We are seeing this within the DNC at large. And it is apparently in maintenance. They haven't learned their lesson. What is the fucking point of this, Democrats? I get why loonies with zero political acumen are engaging in this. And as I said, their social identity is at threat. They're trying to maintain their sense of self. But people ostensibly with some political understanding why. Could it maybe be that the majority of them are just clueless? That seems unlikely. I think it might be a similar response, but sort of in reverse. A type of cognitive dissonance against the realities of the situation the DNC is truly in. Thus, rather than reevaluate what you espouse and why, the DNC now with any clear leadership is left clueless, is left hopeless, with individuals merely repeating lines that symbolize group membership, despite not really even potentially understanding what the fresh fuck it is that they are saying, or why it is so potentially detrimental not only to their political careers, but to the well-being of their entire political party at large. And I think that becomes overwhelmingly evident when you look at some leftists trying to explain their own positions. And I know I've shown plenty of examples of this in the past, but for example, here's this guy on Tucker Carlson who was asked a simple question of whether or not he understood the acronym of sexual identity word salad that he was proposing be taught in Canadian schools. And despite his tacit approval of the education reform to include this education, admittedly was unfamiliar with the basic meaning behind the terms in the curriculum being suggested.
But that long one, quite frankly, until your producers showed it to me, I hadn't seen it, but then I looked at it, and you have all the definitions through there.
Okay, that's fine, but then why do you think it's a good thing if you don't know what it is?
But what's the matter with it?
Well, I don't know what I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, you could hand me a box and say there's something great inside, and my answer would be, okay, what is it? I mean, I don't pronounce things great until I know what they are, but you don't have that problem. So, okay, I'll get specific with you. And this is meaningful because teachers are being taught this, kids will be taught it, and I think I have a right to non-judgmentally ask what they're talking about. So, for example, what's two-spirit?
Well, two-spirit sounds like there's someone they don't know whether they're, fish or fowl. They don't know whether they're frick or frack. So they're clearly confused. And, again, if you're confused, what better place to go than to be at school?
But hey, that's a fucking leaf, and we know they're all completely fucked. Here's one even worse though, and far more close to home, at least when it comes to America. This is Val Johnson, the mayor of New Brighton, Minnesota, and she's about to experience the most racist thing she's ever seen, which is hearing another woman say she doesn't think she overwhelmingly believes in benefits of white privilege.
But those are the things that I think I always ask because I work with these people. I ask about their country, I ask about their families, I ask how it is, how they feel about America, all of that. That's how you get to know somebody. That's how you get to understand where they come from and where their opinions come from. But I don't think you can make such a broad brush and say that we've all been privileged or that we don't understand because we're white.
And let me rephrase it. That statement was one of the most racist things I've ever heard.
What statement?
That you are offended by the fact that you're not feeling the white privilege thing.
The white privilege thing.
Yes, that's right. This woman is literally shaking because another woman said she didn't really believe in the concept of white privilege after having worked extensively with non-white people within the community.
Let me just say this, that the discussion I just heard now makes me so angry. I'm shaking.
It's not even a meme at this point. It's reality. Well, I guess as Shia LaBeouf always said, don't let your memes be dreams. I point this out because I find it interesting, as similarly, Val can't really define what white privilege is, just that it's something white people have and need to prostrate themselves over. How dare you say you don't think it really exists or overwhelmingly affects you? That's the most racist thing I've ever heard. I am disgusted. I don't know what it is, but it makes me sick. Similarly, to me, this indicates many of these people simply have no idea what they are irate about, nor what they support. Merely that they do. They support it. Again, I would expect this from the average person uninvolved in politics, but I think in this case is illustrative of a lack of leadership or direction within the DNC. They're not just angry, they're not just upset, they also just have no idea what to do other than what they've been doing, because they've been given no further directive.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
Why do you always have to say that?
I can only speculate about my programmer's motives. Perhaps he thought I might be summoned for important reasons?
Despite the fact that the data make it clear it's unlikely to work well in their futures. I know there was apparently this tsunami, but they were tsunamis so-called. in districts where we would have expected that. There's not going to be a tsunami in 2018 nor in 2020 if you're unable to change your politics. You are continuing to ostracize the same groups you ostracized in 2016. And I don't think they get it. This appears to be all they have left. Empty attacks at Trump, such as this ad that has gone beyond all the logical appeals and just is full on emotion. Please impeachy Trumpy, please, I'm going to cry. Really? You make baseless accusations against Trump and beg that he be impeached. Who is this going to convince besides those already convinced? Just like the social justice and anti-white narratives drove away voters in 2016.
I'm a citizen who knows it's up to us to do something. It's why I'm funding this effort to raise our voices together and demand that elected officials take a stand on impeachment.
Make a branch and get over it.
Nor did the perpetuation of the Trump as villain outgroup folk devil prevent his election. If anything, it invokes psychological reactance. It invokes, don't tell me not to push this button because I'll push the fucking button. All it has actually done is create greater intergroup animosity. It has created greater psychological reactance. Check out the video I did on mass hysteria of the left for more information, and mass hysteria in general. But this is not a good way of going about things. It's not going to win anyone to your side. As such, I see nothing that would, at this point, indicate a change in voting behaviors anytime in the near future. But, you know, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe doubling down on anti-white rhetoric and the promotion of the idea of white privilege will shoot the DNC towards a riotous victory in 3 years' time. But, once again,
I am become skeptical.
Namely because, in addition to the data I've already provided, these Pew data indicate that about 92% of black people already believe in white privilege or in black oppression, compared to 65% of Hispanics and 42% of whites, according to these data that were collected in 2016. Similarly, blacks are pretty much entirely Democrat, with a small percentage of independents and an extremely small percentage of Republicans. Most of them, the vast majority, 90%, tend to at least lean Democrat. The insistence on this anti-white behavior, that this idea that the white people are out to get you, the white people have all the privilege, they control everything, in some kind of very weirdly similar thing to something I've heard about the Jews. Frankly though, it's not going to gain the DNC any more votes than they already gleaned from the current demographic breakdown of the black population, which I should mention makes up a total of about 13% of the populace of the United States. However, when we consider eligible voters, and that does include people who have outstanding felonies and things that have not been paid in terms of their due to the US government, as well as children, that percentage becomes considerably lower. So as such, so much of this squabbling is seemingly for the purpose of securing, let's be very generous to the DNC, and say 9 to 10% of the population that is already thoroughly dedicated to serving in your party. You're not going to lose them. 95% of them already support you. You're not going to lose the black vote, not anytime soon. Talking about white privilege when you already control the vast majority of the black population, and it does actually make me feel rather concerned for the black population, but that's not going to help you. You're not going to win anymore. So what are you aiming for? The Hispanic population? Well, the Hispanic population, while it similarly does tend to lean Democrat, is far less stable and far less overwhelmingly Democrat, with 27% of Hispanics considering them Republican-leaning in 2014, and it's been maintained into recent Pew data in 2016, and it seems to be in an upward trend. If 65% of Hispanics essentially believe in white privilege to a significant extent, well, I doubt increasing the virulence of this narrative is going to be very effective, considering that means that another 35% of Hispanics don't believe in it to a significant extent. And they are increasing, as we see from this trend, although this could change at any time, in their support of Republican or right-leaning ideas. In other words, the DNC is effectively wasting their time, their money, their effort and energy on groups of people that they have already won over, or groups that they maybe can't through this same narrative. And at this point, they cannot please to a higher degree through this placation attempt. Yet at the same time, the most disturbing thing to me personally, for I certainly don't mind seeing the DNC bury itself like this in a state of utter confusion and lack of purpose, is that this poor little black boy, poor little black girl rigmarole is still being perpetuated not only by the DNC, but in the universities, in academia, and in the media. For example, students, they prefer the concept of white privilege and our anti-meritocracy. Give the black person the job over the white person, not because they deserve it, but because they're owed it in some way. I cannot imagine that that would increase one's self-esteem, and truly, seen as they are disturbed over the very questioning of their beliefs, it's further indicative of what I mentioned earlier, that most people seem confused, if not totally uninformed, of the opinions that they supposedly hold so dear. I do not think most people can describe white privilege. Certainly here, they can't describe white privilege. I would ask any Democrat or leftist then to truly define to me, what is white privilege? And yes, I can, by the way, easily read the epistemological definitions that you have invented and come up with. I can read them and understand them. But can you define it without essentially placing white people in a position as being inherently superior to the other races? What is it about white people that makes them so much better? Why do they need to be taken down? Why do they need to be shut up? If you cannot define such a concept without somehow conceding that whites are unique and moreover uniquely better, why then should white people be stifled? Why do white people need to be controlled? I mean, if you believe that, that's fine, that's your opinion. I have several white ethnonat friends who you'd probably agree with, at least on that point, quite swimmingly, in Before My Horseshoe Theory. But, yeah, if you can't even tell me how that shit works without positing the superiority of the white race, either way, has resulted in reactionary white identitarianism becoming popularized. Woohoo for you! The point is, once again, I don't think they know what they're talking about because they seem so incapable. Is it really that they think that white people are better? I'm not sure. But if this is what you're going for, you're not going to gain any more black votes, you've already secured all of them. And you're certainly not going to gain any more white votes. It's already been made clear you lost them between 2012 and 2016. As such, all things being said, let's go back, and I need to ask the DNC then who they might pick as the forerunner for their 2020 election. Given everything I've just said, who are you going to pick? Who's going to be your leader? I've said that you're leaderless, and you're stuck in this blindfolded dance in the dark of trying to figure out your way. Might it be Bernie Sanders for realsies this time? Well, perhaps, if they had any sense, given he recently held a rally that saw over 1,000 attendees, which is quite unusual outside of the election season, but that's going to be highly debatable, given many of the same political issues that saw a swing towards the GOP in 2016 are represented by Bernie Sanders. He will also be 80 years old by then, and while not impossible, being only 6 years older than Trump, for instance, is fairly advanced in age for a guy. Then there's creepy Uncle Joe Biden, who, even with all the other Tom Dickery with the DNC, even by Democrats, is being poo-pooed as a candidate, which is not surprising in the center of so many sexual misconduct scandals. Yeah, I don't think you want to go with Uncle Joe. I mean, go ahead, be my guest. I just don't think he's the most electable, given the current state of social standing regarding sexual assault issues. I suppose they could run with the Hill Dog again, so she could have a go a third time and finally really have her turn. But that seems unlikely to play out well in their favor, or any differently than the last 2 times she tried. So who do we have left? After Mark's Thuzela, Joe whispers in your ear things you can't unhear, Biden, and the utterly unelectable Hildebeest. Maybe Cory Booker, who can run in line with the racial focus of the party? Kamala Harris, who can run both on race and gender? Or Elizabeth Warren again, who can run on gender and pretend to run on race? Again? Really? You think that's gonna work? Did it work last time? It's not gonna work next time. The data seem fairly consistent. And if you're not aware, DNC, I would direct you toward that voter data. I'm asking honestly, is there a good new potential leader for the DNC who can get this shit sorted and provide them with the direction that they clearly need? I'm not doing all this to mock the DNC, although it's easy and very fun. But as I've said, I'm also not a fan of the GOP. I'm not a Republican. I'm saying this because I'm trying to analyze the DNC and figure out how they might have any chance at repairing themselves. And right now, by maintaining these same strategies, I cannot reasonably predict a major swing in their favor in the coming 2020 election, nor next year's midterms, given the insistence on the same politics that estranged voters in the last election cycle. The overwhelming evidence of corruption, the lying, and the dishonesty, the general lack of any coherent leadership, and just these stupid fucking anti-white politics. But moreover, that bit about leadership, I think that has to be the most damning, given so many of these problems seem to arise from a lack of organization. And without organization and leadership that understand the kind of changes that need to be made, I doubt we're going to see, thereby, much change. So again, this is not merely just me shit-talking the DNC, but rather to try and understand them, and even maybe offer a few points of advice. So that's the DNC, in the immortal words of Tamar Braxton, get yo life. For real, get yo life, get yo entire life.
What does it mean? You better get your life. I do not know what this means.
You don't know what that means?
I have no idea.
Get your life is like, get it together.
I also think it's really possible that the typical back and forth of American politics might not actually be something that's going to happen again. We may see in a definitively right-wing leaning basis for more than just these two terms. Not something I personally have a problem with, of course, but hence why this is just a word of advice. And by the way, for the record, once again, this doesn't mean that we on the right should give up and stop fighting, that we should lay on our backs, that we should ease up. Not in the least, because once again, we have far from won. Given that the left still controls the academy, the media, and much of mainstream political thought, just once again, to you, the DNC, a friendly word of warning. Happy holidays. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Aiden Paladin, Altana Volt.